Well, gentlemen, it's always good to hang out with you. Man, you're my brothers. So Marlon, Dale, how y'all doing today?
Oh, phenomenal. Great.
Phenomenal.
Yes.
I like that word. What about you?
Wonderful.
Dale? Wonderful.
Yeah.
Terrific.
That's awesome. Well, today I wanted to talk about something, and this, all of us at the table being believers, this will be an interesting conversation because we'll get to talk about ourselves to some degree, and talk about culture to some degree.
Okay.
So I think these are the two things. The title for today, for today's episode, is Finding God in the Culture of Today. And first, what I wanted to kind of dive into was each of us have a kind of testimony, so to speak, of our relationship with God. And I kind of wanted each of us to kind of go into that space and then start to look at how would you go about finding God in the culture of today, which I think is a Second Timothy chapter 3 culture.
Right.
But
you want to go into that?
I'm not gonna go into that yet.
Oh, okay.
But I'm let each of us speak, and I say for me, there's been so many different things I could say, but there's been times when I know God's presence impacted something that was going on with me. And one story I'll tell real quick. I was about to buy a house, and I remember God had shown me this was the house for me to buy. And I'm gonna tell you, I had no money at the time. No money.
But you had good credit. Credit's better than money.
Well, I did have good credit because I believed in paying my bills on time. I've always believed in that, but I didn't have money. So what happened in this situation was really interesting. I was sitting at the table with the realtor at the real estate office. We were going back and forth, and she was like, well, I don't think this transaction is going to happen today. She said, you're going to need some cash and da-da-da. I said, but that's not what God told me. And she would happen to be a believer, so I said that to her. I said, that's not what God told me. He said to just continue forward, and everything was going to come together. And we sat there, and she literally said, it was 5:00 in the afternoon. It was after 5:00. She literally just kept saying, I've talked to the bank. Let's just go home for today, and we'll take this up tomorrow. And I said, no, let's just wait, because I believe it's today. I said, let's wait for another 30, 45 minutes. And near the end of that 30, I think it was 45 minutes, near the end of that 45 minutes, called back. The bank said the transaction is going through. Everything's good. And here's the little kicker. The house had no stove, no washer and dryer.
Oh.
In that transaction, at the end of that transaction with the bank, I got a check for $1,500. And that's how I bought the stove, the washer and dryer, and moved in the house.
Yeah.
And it was just me being obedient to what God told me. And so I feel like I've had several incidents like that where I feel like God pressed upon me something, and it came out exactly the way he said.
But what led you in that direction?
What led me in
Or
that?
would you say you was just a believer from the start?
Oh, I was already a believer during that time. It was just
No, I'm talking about like early life. Like, was there a point when you started the belief, or it was just?
It was always around my family, but everybody wasn't like participating. We had people that went to church and all that kind of stuff. And my mom specifically, she wasn't a big church goer or anything like that. That wasn't my background. But we would go occasionally here and there. So it was present, but it wasn't active. It's a difference. I always say it's a difference between knowing something and believing something. And you might know something, like people might know God, but do you believe in God and what the word says? There's two different things. So it was a lot of, you're around it, but there wasn't no activation in that. I think the activation really didn't come until the deeper activation. I had a experience where I had a business when I was very young. And I was a part owner of a record label. I know I've told you that story, Marlon.
Right.
I think, and I was on the precipice of that particular business being very successful. And on the precipice of that, some very dramatic things happened to cause it to fail. And I think that's the time after that is when I really dug into my relationship with God. I think that was the point, the transitional point. It was out of a degree of, we talk about pain brings about change at times. It was disappointment more than pain, though. And when you have people who are around you, because I had partners in the business that had been dishonest and things of that nature, and it really, it was major disappointment for me for probably about 24 months after that. 2 years I probably suffered carrying that, and that changed me. And after that, I didn't move without faith. I had to move with faith because at that time I had lost so much money and all this kind of stuff that went on. But I was in my 20s experiencing that. I was making a lot of money, driving a Benz, all that kind of stuff. So it was a really interesting time, but it really also, the pain changed my trajectory, or the failure and disappointment. And it was the pain of failure and disappointment because I never imagined myself not succeeding. And that may have been pride. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that humility came out of that and really changed me as a person and caused me to move differently. What about you?
That's
Dale?
good stuff. Well, I didn't get it to, I would say, hardcore maybe like 5 years ago. But I had always been going to church with the grandparents, stuff like that. And early on, the belief wasn't there. But then as I look back at certain things that happen, then it can only be God sustaining. So like when I was younger, I believe I was like 3 or 4, my dad was going to work. I was riding with him, and just out of nowhere, the truck caught on fire.
Whoa.
Yeah, and the flames started going up, and somebody that was driving in the opposite lane had almost like cut us off to kind of like, because they seen it getting worse. So my dad hurry up, pull over, and then by the time he pull over, I mean, it's just, and I'm stuck in the seatbelt. So he ran around, but now he's pulling me. Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Not coming out at
like
all.
The 4th or 5th time he tried, I came, he was able to get, but I'm talking about as soon as he grabbed me and like turned away the ship, boom.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
So, looking back, that could have been my demise right there. Yeah. I remember riding with Chief when we was in that accident where the guy ended up falling asleep and hitting us,
Wow.
and rear end. I was in the back seat. Same thing. I mean, it was heavy impact. I believe your car was totaled.
Yeah.
Came out unscathed.
Wow.
Oh, you would love it, Skate.
The overall event, but I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I could have been impaired or something like that. And then just over time, you have a lot of questions in your mind that don't get answered, or you don't have peace, or you just searching, looking.
Right.
And then after a while, you get like mild submission. So there's like people in your life and you're seeing like, well, man, how do these people live a certain way? How do they almost live problem-free lives? and they all had one thing in common, and it was that belief, you know. And I'm like, still, you know, you want to fight it? No, this just can't be it. And once I finally went into it, it was like smooth sailing, man. And that just solidified everything. Yeah, it's like, it's hard to believe. And then, you know, they say the power of prayer. So the same thing, I always wanted peace because I got a constantly racing mind, you know. But once I prayed for it and then I just let it go, and it was only maybe a few months later, it's just almost like I didn't feel anything. And it sustained. It wasn't just in that moment. It's a thing that I, you know, had ever since that, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. But I can only attribute it to one thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was raised in it, but it was routine. Just like you said, you just get up every morning, you go. You really just go through your worship. You used to go to church, and it wasn't really applicable to me.
Yeah.
Afterwards, you know, you go, you live a life that's in opposition to what you actually believe in. So some of these situations, I had a lot of them. In fact, there was another one with us. Remember that mall incident?
Oh man.
You know, somebody drew on me. He drew on me.
I know what that
right?
means.
And having to talk out of the situation,
Yeah.
and like thinking like, man, this could really kind of be
Could have been all over.
right. This could be it. And how did we get out of the situation if not for it being this thing? Because couldn't nobody pull us out. And I've had multiple situations on occasions where it's like, this is not supposed to work out well. If I make a left turn, it's over. If I make this turn, it's right. There was one small incident. And I think I told you both, but just to rehatch it, man, I was like, I remember I had just lost my job. I had got a new job. I was a courier at the time.
Yeah.
And I had all these bills. I just got my license off suspension. I'm driving right up there off of John Young. And you know where First Baptist is, but right on John
Know
Young
exactly where
and
you're talking
LB. So I'm driving, right? And I'm talking about, bro, I'm like dead broke. I don't have anything at the time. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna pay stuff. And I'm probably going like 40, 45, and bike police pull me over. And I'm like, oh. At that time I said, that's it. I'm not gonna do nothing good. I'm just gonna be out here just wilding out. I'm just gonna balls to the walls, go demon time. That's what I'm gonna do. You know, the officer gave me a $7 ticket. He didn't write me no speeding ticket. He like saw like the desperation on my face. He just had mercy. And he gave me, hey, I'm gonna give you this ticket. All you have to do is say that you weren't able to present your registration and your license. It's a $7 ticket. Man, just be careful. I want you to be safe. I see it's rough. He said, man, but here. And man, that situation was like, wow. I knew it had to be him because once again, desperation was on my face, and it was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I have a multitude of these situations, more than I can count to even talk about. We'd be here all day, but that was one of them because I was like, you know how you're like on the edge of something else. There's a straw,
One more.
I'm going left all the way. And that was one that just went like surprisingly well and very generous.
And you had to have some things that hadn't gone well before to know what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
I know the context of that.
right. But it's like you say, when you start to look at the way you're supposed to be,
Yeah.
and understanding that part,
Yeah.
is what made the turn. And
We talked about how we perceive God's presence in our lives. So how does someone find that? How does someone connect with that? Let me ask you, do you have to be searching for that to find you?
that's a tough question for me.
I say, yeah.
I think so. I would say sometimes you have some incidents that are somewhat unexplainable.
Right.
And so you begin to question. But I think you do kind of have to be in a space to be like, somewhat trying to
because
figure out.
it's too much going on in society. Like, it's a lot of distraction. So if you don't want what's right, it'll pass you by.
So with that thought, let me ask you another question. Not only I'm thinking about you searching for it, but even beyond the searching, does there have to be beyond the searching, there has to be a willingness to receive it too?
I think that's the toughest thing, because how are you going to identify what it is if you don't have some intuit or something in you to say, I want to believe or I want to understand?
Is that where most of the rejection comes from?
I think so.
The rejection for what?
Rejection of God Himself.
I think
And in situations
that's
of I'm gonna
question.
deny. The reason why I'm asking that is because a lot of times things happen that are trying to put us on a certain path, and we reject those things, and we end up in a worse situation. So I'm asking that question because I've seen this happen before. Something get rejected multiple times, and then the person ends up in a worse
that's why I say
situation.
that's loaded. I think the rejection it's a multitude of things, but a lot of it start from just societal conditioning. Because before, when you only had church, everybody believed in God. But now with the information age, there's a lot of things to detest that. And that's what's leading people astray, because you have options. It's like you can go Google, did Jesus exist? There's information to support that. But then on the flip end, Jesus never existed. We can't find his bones, anything.
Right.
So, but which way are you going to go with? So it's the same thing like picking a political party. You got to pick one.
I think
You know?
it is a loaded situation, right? Because I think people, it's really based on.
I did that on
individual.
purpose, by the way.
Right. I figured that.
Yeah.
But if you are a person that is driven by what you see when you're looking at other people, you're always constantly comparing yourself to others, and you may look at a person that seems to be inherently evil, but they have this level of success.
Right.
When you try to do the same thing that person does and it doesn't work for you, it's like the rejection could be like, what is going on? Why is
Why isn't God giving
Right.
me, a good person, the
Right.
success that He's giving somebody that's evil?
See?
But see, I'll say something to that because I get asked that question at times. There's an evil way to get money and there's a righteous way to get money.
Yes.
So do you want to go, are you willing to go about it the evil way to get money? Is money more important to you than your soul?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you got to ask
That's a
the
real
person that
question.
question.
That's a real question. And typically for the people that's out here, their desires are wicked. So they're gonna be like, well, I choose not to believe God because I'm looking at him. I'm looking at Future. I'm looking at Jay-Z. My bad. But I'm just saying though, a lot of times if the desire of the person is not a good desire, it will seem like the evil way is the way to go. And so I don't want to be regulated by a God that's going to keep me from having this type of lifestyle. So as you said before, internally, what is the person's motivation? Are they seeking?
Where's the heart?
Yeah.
Again.
And a lot of have bad motivation, bad desires.
Yes.
Remember Genesis 6, right?
I do. Every desire of a man is evil continually. Yeah.
I'm going to read this to you from 2 Timothy, and I think it's interesting. And you know how I feel about this, and you and I talked about this.
Yes.
It says, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such, it tells us, turn away.
Yes. You described present day.
So
Unfortunately,
I asked that question because we talk about all the different things in culture, and a lot of the things I see are connected to being prideful, connected to being a lover of self, connected to I'm the most important thing in this room. And then you've got some people that are just out of control with doing evil to benefit themselves. So what's your thought on this? I think we're actually, and I'm gonna say this, I think we're actually living in this time.
right. And that's what's so that's so hurtful about the situation, that you're living in a condition where telling you you're getting closer to the end. But the end, depending on what you believe, could either be a positive or a negative thing. And for most people that are in society, that's a negative thing, because I want this kind of lifestyle.
I want this to continue
Right.
the way it is.
And everything that you just listed are listed as pluses in society. Being heady, being high-minded, lovers of self, having a form of God, right? So the potential that you're very philanthropic, you're a philanthropist. My words. You're somebody who gives a lot,
Yeah.
but internally, you're not a good person at all.
Well, it leads me to the issue of, false prophets.
Yes.
It leads me to the issue of people who say things that they know are totally untrue. There's a lot of people who I see who say things and they're saying it from the perch, and I'll say from the perch of a pulpit, and they're literally lying.
Yes.
So
That offering and collection plate that circulates 2 to 3 times. Because that's a whole deeper thing, but in God's to this verse, 2 Timothy 3, and you listen, I love the whole verse.
yeah, I know what it
the
goes.
first
on
part
to.
of the verse
Yes.
speaks towards the way of the world. The second part of the verse speaks towards how we correct it
How we correct.
and how you separate from it. So, listen, that first couple of sentences, those are positive
It's deep.
things.
I got a question for both. Do you believe that people are inherently that way or conditioned that way?
No,
In that
they're inherently
second.
that way without having, because look, at the end of the day, you need guidance.
Mhm.
Everybody draws from something, whether it's other individuals, whether it's a faith or belief, you draw from something. So, I mean, if you go without anything, the only way how they tell you, the only way you have peace, you get rid of everybody else.
Oh, that's Thanos, man.
That's what they say.
From the Avengers movie.
Right? but it's the truth, though. If you have to sit and work with somebody else, you can't be selfish, heady, and high-minded, because somebody's going to seek to have control over the other individual. So,
Well, a lot of what I always say, and I know you've heard me say this before. I say there's a major difference between being confident and being arrogant.
yes,
I always say
Thin line.
Yeah, but I always say confidence is simply this. Confidence is knowing the gifts God has put into you, and knowing how to confidently and knowing how to move in those gifts, and not be basically somebody who puts anybody down, not be somebody who basically thinks they're better than other people. It's you're moving in the gifts and you're confident in the ability that God has given you. Then there's arrogance, which is actually thinking you're better than other people.
you see
And
what
so
you
those
said?
are two different things.
You just defined it. See the two differences, the
Yeah.
intent behind it. When it's confidence, you look to uplift everybody and gain trust by
And
doing
it's internal.
right. But if it's arrogance, it's to separate
Yeah.
me from everybody else.
Right.
Me.
And so there's a big difference. And so when you see arrogance as opposed to confidence, then you know there's usually going to be an issue. That's where Solomon's statements about vanity come from.
Of course. Why did he have vanity?
Yeah.
Vanity, which is
He had
excessive
all the
pride,
money
right? He had all the money
and all the women and all the power.
and his beginning is very different than his end.
Yes.
he started out being this man who wanted wisdom to lead God's people. And then he ended up being this man who had taken on all these wives, and they had caused him to go astray from the very thing that God was telling him, hey, keep me first, keep God first. And he started taking in the information from all these women regarding other gods and serving these other gods. And now he's off track with God because he's letting all these other things influence him. And then you know that he was wrong because the kingdom was split after his reign.
Yes, that was the punishment.
That was the punishment.
Yeah.
So you know Solomon's beginning was good, but his end was wrong. And all the wealth was the reason why. Because if you don't have the wealth, you can't have the women, you can't have all the other stuff.
But when you got money, who needs God?
That's true.
But unfortunately, that's kind of the thought process behind society. If I get enough money, really, who is God?
No, I am God.
Right.
That's what it really is.
Yeah.
You just pegged it on the head. Really, I've become God. Because I think that's the syndrome when you start walking into the space where people are billionaires. They feel like they should control society because society needs to benefit me because I'm the one who should be leading society because I'm the most successful. And really, that is a dangerous road to be on, even though you feel good about it because you're so wealthy. But really, that's not going to take you to where you need to go in the end. But it's hard for somebody who has that much money to see that.
Yeah.
So they're uncorrectable.
Yeah.
Literally. Because I've been so fortunate, I've made so much money. So how can I be wrong?
Yeah, right. That's the smartest person in the room, right? It's the wealthy people. That's what they tell you.
And I'm not attacking people who have money per se, because I don't have anything against somebody being wealthy. But what I do have something against is this excessive pride and vanity that I think brings about evil thought processes.
But I must say this. If we had our net worth above our heads, my net worth is double yours, nobody's listening to you guys. They're going to listen to me, right? Because society respects.
But society respects money. Society respects the wealthiest person in the room because that's what we've been taught.
Yeah.
We've been taught that, we've been conditioned that way by a capitalistic culture. And it's not anything necessarily wrong with, I never say anything wrong about making money. I applaud somebody who's been successful. It's the condition of your heart once you are successful that's going to determine who you really are. Because I always say money always shows your true character.
How does the Matthew verse go though? Verily, verily, I say unto you, shall a rich man make it into heaven as a camel into the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
That's
it's
profound because
the natural state is the thing. The more, for some people, the more money you have, the more godly you must be because God has blessed you. But see, that's why I always say it's important to understand you can get money from more than one source.
Yeah. Well, it's two sources.
Yeah, it's really two. But I'm just saying, that's why I'm making
you know, the opposite of God, right? It's Satan. Satan will elevate you, put you in positions of power. And that what he tried, what he tempted Christ.
When he tempted Christ. I can give you all of this if you worship me. And so that's where it comes from. And the thing of it is at the end, I think when we talk about the issue of, and I'm going back to the issue of false prophets, I think it's saying what people want to hear. We talked about
itching ears.
We talked about 2 Timothy 4 and where it talks about the itching ears. I'm going to go to places that feed me what I want to hear. I don't care about truth. Truth doesn't matter to me. Really, I just want to be tantalized with the things that make me feel good about myself rather than deal with myself honestly and truthfully and look in the mirror and say, these are the things I need to change. Like the old Michael Jackson song, what does it say? I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I need to change me because me is the thing that needs correcting. And people don't want to do that anymore. And I think when it comes to trying to find God, the first thing you have to be is humble enough to know you need change and correction.
But where is he in today's culture?
That's a good question. I posed that question to you. Where do you think he is, Dale? I'm gonna turn that.
I
question
go
around to
last
you.
on this.
Oh, I answer it honestly. He's not there. He's not in culture because he is the trendsetter. He is the culture, and if everything is not the way he has it set, then it's not his way. Now you have a perversion of what we feel is
Well,
the truth.
I think culture is something that someone can choose, and I think yes, I'll agree with you 100%. God does have a culture, but so does his adversary.
Yes,
His adversary has a culture,
and that's the one everybody loves.
But here's the thing about this. It's like the basic thing of the scripture says is, I think this is back in Deuteronomy. It says, I put before you life and death.
Yeah,
Choose life.
life.
And so here's the thing. I think in choosing who they're going to serve, so to speak, because it says choose this day whom you shall serve. That's what Joshua was saying.
Mm.
I think they choose what visibly, immediately seems quicker to get to where they're going. And it's funny, it ends up being the thing that destroys them over time, because most people don't get to that pinnacle of where they're a billionaire or worth $500 million. Most people, if they're seeking money, they have it in their heart, but they're still struggling.
Yeah.
And so
Well, that's the illusion of progress.
the illusion of progress.
Yeah.
The illusion of progress. And I think you have to decide whether you're going to be content where you are, and then from that place of contentment with who you are, then allow God to navigate you to those other things, right?
Mm-hmm. That's the inner and the outer man.
And so since there's no, I ask this question.
Let me hit the home run.
Okay.
So I think it's lost because, a lot of people are animal-like. They only want to do things that's going to give them a reward at the end, and, serving God is not, where do I get these nice shiny things? It offers you like a lot of internal correction, but people are looking for the external things. So it's like they don't want to believe in something that is not going to provide something material. You get what I'm saying? So it's like if I go to church this weekend, I need a car now.
But it's what you think the reward is. That's what it is. Because see, if the reward is transformation, the reward is becoming a better person, the reward is on
But
those
where
things.
does that fit into today's
it
like?
doesn't
Who
fit
wants
in the
to be a good person? Where's the trophy for that?
But let me say this. I think you're 100% right in what you're saying, but I also think that I know people who are good people who live very, very comfortable lives, but it's because they have their priorities straight. And I think what people think, there's a way to shortcut without having your priorities straight, and that shortcut is provided by the enemy, by the person, by some kind of evil method of doing things, some kind of evil influence, some kind of, I'm going to take this shortcut. And when I take this shortcut is going to get me to my Lexus faster, my Bentley faster, my whatever it is that I'm seeking. Because really that stuff has become the thing that I'm really worshiping. They're not going to say it that way. You'll never hear somebody saying they're worshiping money, but you look at their actions, their lifestyle, the way they function, and you look at their priorities and say, what are your priorities? Mm-hmm. And their priorities tell you that.
Well, that's
not
the money give them the value, and that's what people want. Like everybody want to be seen, but how are you seen?
So,
Rough.
How should we want to be seen?
From what perspective?
Okay,
you have to tell.
Give me the
context.
Give me the culture perspective, and then give me what you believe is a right perspective.
Okay, right perspective is always going to be biblical perspective for me. So, culture perspective is whatever society dictates that. What does society say? So whatever is trendy in society, that will dictate what is correct because they determine it changes.
Yeah.
One season it may be driving the Bugatti. The next season it may be the
The
Lambo.
Ferrari.
Right. Or next season it might be wearing the Louis V. Next season it might be the Gucci. It always changes based upon what they deem or put on the pedestal, whatever the culture is. From a biblical standpoint, is an opposition of anything that is material. It's internally what you are morally. What are your ethics, your character? These are the things that matter on a biblical sense. So that would be the difference.
I'm gonna pose another question that's outside of the box, and I'm gonna pose another question that's outside of the box, and I know it's gonna strike a chord.
It's probably gonna be good. So go ahead.
Your definition, and I want to hear from both of you on this one. Your definition, because this is something we hear on social media all the time. What is your definition of a high value man?
Here we go.
What is your definition? Because we hear this in culture.
My personal definition?
Your personal definition.
My personal definition.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always going to align scripturally. A person of high character, high value, is a person that puts God first, a person that has moral integrity according to what God sets, a person that has compassion, a person that has temperance.
So,
These are the things that I find in high value people or high value men.
yeah.
Because with those characteristics, you can only build with a characteristic like that. You can't tear down with those.
You said something that I know we've talked about this, and I know that a lot of those things I 100% agree with. And I think, see, what people think is when you say those things, the thing you leave out is you ain't saying nothing about money.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. Can a high value man who has those characteristics have money? Absolutely, because a lot of times those guys are men who know how to take care of business. When you say temperance, people don't realize that self-control and discipline are really important to actually earning wealth.
Yes.
So when you hear those words actually create the opportunity for somebody who's spiritually grounded to get wealthy. But a lot of people don't realize that because they go right past it, because when I don't hear the word money, I immediately think you leaving the most important thing out.
Right. Well, that's the culture, right? Then that's the
Right.
difference.
Yeah, because culture look at the tail end too. They don't really look at the dynamics it takes to get to a certain place. You know, we're used to seeing people after they're propped up.
Yeah.
But how did they get there?
Yeah.
That's the part people don't want to hear. So, you know, you look at, let's say, Elon Musk, right? He's worth this much now, but then what was the road to get there? Nobody cares about the road. They only care about the result.
Well,
You know?
A lot of times that's true. I think people look at end results and they skip. As long as you can skip there. I don't think people sometimes, if the journey is, from a culture standpoint, if the journey is something that is flashy, if it's something that can put them in a spotlight where they can be highlighted as being great, they don't mind doing the journey because the end results is them being, what's the word? I can't even think of the word. When a person has, they're getting all the attention. Right. Once the spotlight is on you and you get all the attention
Accolades.
and the admiration and accolades, it's okay. The journey's great.
yeah.
Right. Just like a reality TV show. All that mess is great because it's generating interest and income. But if the show get canceled, all of a sudden, yeah.
So so how does a person who's sitting in those spaces navigate to what we're talking about? Navigate to a person who has self-control, navigate to a person who has the kind of discipline, navigate to a person who has this relationship with God that you're speaking of. Navigate. How does a person navigate out of that culture, out of that mindset, and get to that other place? Because that's the question, because I think that's really where that's
So
really
how do
where you
they
have to
leave?
take.
So
How do they get from one place to another? Does it have to be some event that causes them pain? Does it have to be?
Yes. It's usually a question that brings upon another question. So I think everybody in life, you reach a point where it's like it's something more,
Yeah.
because it's only so much in the world we can do. So let's say you say, I just got to get, let's say a degree. You get a degree, and then it's not all it's supposed. But then now it's got to be something else. You say, I need to make a lot of money. You make a lot of money, and then same thing. You say it's got to be something else. And to me, that's where people start soul searching, because now you're trying to transcend, the material world. It has to have a bigger meaning and purpose.
But doesn't that mean there's an extreme on both ends? That like you can get to the highest point and still feel this emptiness, or you can be at the lowest point and feel empty.
Cliff top and rock bottom.
Yep.
well, yeah, you're right. It goes on, but see, that's why I say the intention. What is the end goal? What is the intention of the individual? Do I want to follow this guy that is attached to this spiritual power, or do I want to attach myself to the guy that doesn't have it but has everything else?
But a lot of time, ultimately, everybody end up in the same place.
Well, you know,
The older we get, then all the material stuff don't matter anyway. It's like at a certain age, how much more money
And
can you make?
you know
You
what?
start to look for substance. It's the same thing what we were saying last relationship.
think-
Even in the dating, right? At first they gotta look a certain way, this and that. But after you get so many tens, a 10 and
I
a
don't
10,
think- I don't
they
think
gotta
it's-
be something
No,
else.
I don't.
Substance.
I don't think so. I think for some people, it's never unquenchable. It's the quest. So if I got 5 10s, I got to get 7. I got to get 8.
But you don't think that ever, but it gotta
No,
wear
for
out
some-
though at some point.
For some people, it never wears out. That's their existence,
Perpetual.
perpetual until it's over.
Wow.
It is.
It's
Some people-
breathtaking.
Some, I mean,
You have knocked the wind out of my sails.
I think it does require. I think at the end of the day, there's a discipline that some people just don't walk in that it does require at some point. If you're going to have boundaries, if you're going to have the things that keep you free, if you're going to have the things that aren't self-destructive in your life, I think you have to get to a place where there's some temperance, I'll use your word, some self-control, because if it's not there, okay, here's what I think of, what comes to mind, a common scripture. I think it's 2 Corinthians 10:5, where it says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. How do you do that if you don't have any self-control or discipline?
you can't. You don't make it. You have to rein it in, and you have to want to rein it in.
And it has to be in you. It's a choice. It's
Yes,
not something.
absolutely.
It's not something outside of yourself that's going to do that. And so, like when we talk about business and we talk about people finding God, there has to be a trigger point.
Yeah.
Whether it's another person,
But I'm saying that's that internal
whether it's
question,
an
though.
event, whether it's an
Yeah.
event bringing that trigger point, but
Mm-hmm.
that trigger point does become that question on the inside of you. But it has to be something that causes that to happen. And when it does happen, it's your response to it that's going to determine if you go, like you say, when you was in that situation with that car,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're going to go right or left. And left is all the way, I'm going to go all the way out and do all the bad stuff to get me to where I want to go. I'm going to go right, and I'm going to try to stay on the right track.
I got a question. So now, we're trying to help people find God in the culture,
Correct.
but how?
I
Why?
think- I
Why?
think
Why is that the choice for them to make? Because remember, it's left or
It's
right.
left or right.
But why, in your opinion? And then you.
Well, I say, in my opinion, I say that the only way that you really have true sustainability is to go in the right direction. Because what happens is you may have an up for a while going in the left direction, but it's not sustainable. Funny when you read the verse where it says, for the love of money is the root of all evil, right? Then it goes on to say, these people pierce themselves through. Notice what it says, pierce themselves through with many sorrows. meaning while they're seeking, running after money, they make the wrong decisions in that process. They are the ones that have the wrong behavior. They are the ones that's causing their sorrows. So here's the thing. You can get this stuff because there's a lot of people who got a lot of stuff and they're really unhappy. Why? Because they're still piercing, they're running after the money, but they're piercing themselves through with many sorrows in other areas of their lives. So that's really what happens. It's not sustainable. It becomes self-destructive because the behaviors that go along with getting the money are bad. And when you go about it the wrong way, so you end up damaging yourself. And I think that's the reason why.
Is it just the money or is it chasing the world?
Well, it's chasing a lot of things.
You
It's
can
chasing-
chase
it's chasing
love,
what
you can
looks like
chase
success.
drugs, anything.
Well, when you, I guess when you talk about culture, I think about what they're doing to
So they're
make
doing
themselves
everything.
feel. But I say what they're doing to make themselves feel good about themselves,
Yeah.
and all of those things are really temporary.
All right, Mom.
I kind of see it the way you do. I think ultimately, when you're chasing in the opposite direction, it never leads to peace.
Mm.
It leads to restlessness. It leads to disgruntledness. It leads to a very difficult life. When you seek in the other direction, there is peace and validation. And that's what I find, but it's when you're dealing with the world, everything is subjective. That's the problem. My truth, my perspective, and not the actual fact of what it is. We look at the table is black. That's what the table is.
I think the table's red. You know,
Right.
everybody,
I think it's red.
everybody needs to accept that I believe that the table's red.
And that's the problem with society and culture. It's based on your specific perception.
Subjective.
So
Truth.
everybody's right.
So, and from the world standpoint, but in truth, you never get an answer that way. So it just leads to just nothing but dysfunction because he sees it one way, I see one way. But when it's the other way, everybody's in unison. Okay, this can only lead to agreement and peace. When you have that kind of direction or that kind of mindset.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Well, I think I don't know if this gives an answer, but it certainly gives a thought process I believe that people need to think about when they're considering this. And maybe some of this information will reach them at a point where they have the question.
But I think you gave them the answer, though. Nothing of the world will bring you happiness. And that's the answer in itself. So where they take it from there is
But the
on them.
question that has to be resolved is the one that's inside of them. I agree with you, but I think there's the
Desire
question
has to be
inside of them.
there.
Because if you don't resolve the question on the inside of you and come to that place and come to that understanding,
It never
I
be
think
resolved.
it'll never be resolved. That's the problem.
You'll be like a sea lion trying to eat a banana. All over the place.
Hey, I don't know where you got that one from.
Or a giraffe trying to put on a pair of jeans.
Man.
Well, I just say, man, good conversation, man. I appreciate both of your thought processes and hopefully, we'll get some feedback on this because I'm curious as to what other people's trigger points may have been where they made a decision one way or the other. Because they may have made a decision, say, hey, I don't believe there's no God because there's no way he can exist because of this. And then there's somebody who will make a decision, I absolutely believe because of this. And so I think I'm curious as to what people's trigger points may be.
Yeah.
Okay, John, you made a book predicated on wisdom for the week that can help people throughout their day or throughout their process of some good chapters and good biblical verses to go along with their life. From your book, what are your favorite chapters?
Well, first I want to preface the book really was originally written at a time when I was going through some tough stuff. And I needed to motivate myself. And so you got a couple of chapters in there that's really important to me. One is understanding the power of pain as it relates to transformation, because pain is, if you take it right, and you say, take it, I got to take pain. But if you take pain the correct way, meaning you look at it as something you can learn from, rather than looking at it as, oh, woe is me, I'm going to stay in this place and I'm just going to just wallow. No, I think you have to really look at pain as an opportunity to be taught. And once you can come to that place, and sometimes you don't come to that place right away, but once you come to that place, then pain becomes this thing that allows you to really see yourself, and see yourself with a clarity that you wouldn't see yourself with otherwise, I believe. And I think in that, that's one of the most important things I wrote about. It's week by week. It's something that I try to get people to grab onto. So it's a 52-week progression. But learning pain, learning about how to use and leverage pain in the right way. I think that's really important. And then here's the other one that I think is really important, and it's the first one. It talks about the power of being your own cheerleader, your number one cheerleader, learning how to motivate yourself. Because sometimes you may not have anybody that really wants to motivate you, according to what state you're in. And so you may have to figure out how to motivate yourself. And those are really two extremely important things. Is learning how to manage your pain properly, and learning how to learn from it, and learning how to leverage it, and then motivating yourself. I got to get back out and do what I'm called to do, and be effective in what I'm doing. And so those are two things to me that are critical in life, because you always going to have hills and valleys. You always going to have ups and downs. It's how you respond to them at the end of the day. And I think that's what that book really helps you to deal with. Thank you for coming to check us out here at Epic Dialogue. Every podcast, we're looking to make you think. We're looking to make you think about how society is impacting you, and how you should be thinking about really how your thoughts should be impacting how you move in society. It's really to transform your mind, to get you to think differently about the world you're engaging with. Because at the end of the day, this is about you understanding that society is not supposed to dictate to you, but you're supposed to dictate how you function in society based on the truth that God has placed inside of you. We thank you for joining us. Come and join us anytime. We look forward to your feedback. Thank you very much.
To a close.
Appreciate
Yes, sir.
it. We'll get together soon for another podcast. So thank you.